Hey guys, tonight we're going to wander into a story that might feel like a mirror you didn't know you were standing in front of. You know those late night thoughts, the kind that slip in when you're too tired to fight them, where you look back at an old relationship and think, why did I meet that person in that way at that exact time? And then when things fell apart, maybe you sighed and said, well, I guess it was fate. We grow up with phrases like that, don't we? Little sayings that make it sound as though some invisible hand is arranging our meetings, tying invisible threads between hearts and scripting every heartbreak in advance. It's comforting in a way. It means we don't have to ask too many hard questions because destiny made the choice for us. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if there was no cosmic script at all, only a chain of choices? Big and small, conscious and unconscious, that you've been making every single day. So before you settle in and get too comfortable, take a moment to let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always love knowing who's here and what your little corner of the world feels like in this moment. And of course, only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep taking these quiet night walks together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's step into tonight's journey together. No fate, no grand design. Just us here pulling gently at the threads of something we've been taught to call destiny, but might just be the story of our own choosing. Have you ever noticed how often we hide behind the word fate? It's such a comforting little shield. If something good happens, we say it was meant to be. If something shatters, we shrug and say it was written in the stars. Fate becomes the perfect scapegoat. We don't have to examine the steps we took, the words we spoke, the small decisions that led us exactly where we are. But here's the thing, the Buddha never taught fate. In the original teachings, every single thing from the birth of a star to the flicker of an eyebrow arises from causes and conditions. Nothing appears out of thin air. Nothing disappears into nothingness. Nothing is random. It's called dependent origination. Because this exists, that exists. Because this arises, that arises. Sounds simple, right? But if you really let it sink in, you'll start to see the entire fabric of your life differently. Every connection, every heartbreak, every chance meeting isn't some divine lottery. It's the result of a sequence. Think about it. The first glance across a crowded room, a feeling that stirs in your chest, a small desire to get closer, a decision to act on that feeling, and then dozens of tiny responses, gestures, words that weave the invisible thread between you and someone else. That's what we call Duyen in Vietnamese Buddhism conditions, but there's no magic string dangling from the sky. No God placing people in your path to test you. It's your own patterns, your own habits, your own unhealed wounds quietly leading you exactly where you were always going to walk, unless you choose differently. When people say, I don't know why I loved them, or I couldn't stop, even though I knew it would hurt, they're describing dependent origination in action. Mind not yet awake habits still running the show. So the cycle repeats. The most liberating and yes, also the scariest truth is this. Nothing in your relationships is fixed. If you stop, see clearly, and choose not to follow the same impulse, the so-called fate dissolves. The current stops pulling you under. And maybe you're thinking, but what about the people who just feel destined? Well, the answer is coming. But we have to go a little deeper into the mechanics of this so-called destiny before the illusion truly cracks open. Because once you see how the threads are spun, you'll realize you've been holding the spindle in your own hands this whole time. We're going to look at how destined people actually act as mirrors, showing you parts of yourself you've been running from. And that's where things get really interesting. Some people walk into your life and it feels electric. They make you laugh without trying. They seem to get you without explanations. Or maybe they touch a part of you that feels like it's been sleeping for years. And just as quickly, some of those same people can make you ache in ways you didn't know you could hurt. We like to think they appeared for a reason, that the universe handpicked them to love us, challenge us, or break us so we could grow. But here's the quieter truth. They didn't come to complete you. They came to reflect you. Every person you feel drawn to is in some way a mirror, the one you adore. They might reflect the part of you you've forgotten something, bright, alive, unafraid, the one who hurts you. They might reflect a wound you've refused to look at, the one who terrifies you. They might hold up the mirror to your most fragile places, the parts you've hidden away from everyone, even yourself. If you've ever been betrayed, it's tempting to focus on their actions. But in the Buddhist lens, betrayal is also an invitation to notice where you've betrayed yourself, maybe by ignoring red flags, maybe by silencing your own needs. If you've ever been abandoned, yes, it's painful, but it's also a mirror showing you where you've already abandoned your own heart. That's the uncomfortable part of dependent origination. No one can wound you unless there's already a crack for the pain to slip into. It's not about blaming yourself, it's about realizing the source isn't out there. And when you see that clearly, you begin to reclaim the power to stop the cycle. Here's where it gets practical, because seeing yourself in the mirror of another person isn't always pleasant. The trick is learning not to smash the mirror or run from it, but to look long enough to understand what's being shown. So let me ask you this, because your answer might be the first step toward that understanding. What's one moment in your life when someone's presence or absence taught you something real about yourself? Drop it in the comments. You never know. Your story might be the mirror someone else needs tonight. Next, we're going to explore why we keep stepping into the same kinds of relationships over and over, different names, different faces, but somehow the same ending. And once we uncover that, you'll see just how fate has been quietly borrowing your own habits to write the script. Have you ever noticed how the story changes, but somehow the ending stays the same? Different face, different laugh, different way they say your name, and yet you're left in the same emotional place you swore you'd never visit again. It's not bad luck. It's not the universe picking on you. It's something Buddhism calls habit energy, patterns so deeply ingrained in your mind that they run without your permission. These patterns are the seeds of what we call fate. Here's how it works. You feel lonely. You reach for connection without really looking. You fall for the same type of person because the familiar feels safe. The same conflicts arise. The same ending unfolds. And because it's all so familiar, your mind quietly labels it as normal. We tell ourselves next time will be different. But unless we interrupt the chain, next time is just last time in a new outfit. Breaking the loop isn't about swearing off love or cutting yourself off from people. It's about pausing before the impulse carries you forward. It's about catching the first spark before it becomes a fire you can't put out. The Buddha's teaching on dependent origination is like seeing the blueprint of your own life. Once you see it, you can choose to build something entirely different. Here's the liberating part: you don't have to fix every link in the chain to change your story. You just have to break one. Maybe that's pausing before sending the text. Maybe it's walking away before the third red flag. Maybe it's choosing a conversation instead of silent resentment. And yes, it's hard, because stopping mid-loop feels unnatural. But the more you practice, the easier it becomes to choose from awareness instead of autopilot. If you've ever caught yourself in the middle of repeating an old pattern and decided just once to do something different, I want to hear about it. Share it in the comments. Your choice might be the reminder someone else needs tonight that change is possible. Because next we're going to step into something even more challenging and beautiful: the idea that real freedom isn't about avoiding relationships altogether. It's about learning to stay in them without getting caught in the net. And that's where the heart of this teaching really starts to shine. When most people hear the word freedom, they picture escape, packing a bag, disappearing, walking away from everything and everyone that ever made them hurt. And sure, that can feel like freedom for a while. But in the Buddhist sense, real freedom isn't about leaving the world. It's about staying in it without being tangled in its strings. Imagine being in a relationship, romantic, family, friendship, and still feeling light. Not because you don't care, but because you're not clinging. You can be close without gripping. You can love without turning love into possession. You can care without making their choices the ruler of your peace. That's what it means to have Duin connection without being led by it. It's like standing in a river without being swept away. The water still touches you. Sometimes it's cool and refreshing, sometimes it's cold and harsh. But you're not flailing. You're steady on your feet. This kind of freedom doesn't come from cutting ties. It comes from seeing clearly where the strings are and choosing not to tie them tighter. When someone hurts you, you notice the sting, but you also notice the part of you that wants to grip the hurt. When someone loves you, you enjoy the warmth without demanding. They keep the flame exactly the same forever. It's not detachment in the cold sense, it's engagement without imprisonment. And that takes practice. Practice in seeing your own reactions before they sweep you away. Practice in letting moments breathe before you label them good or bad. Here's where I want to pull you in for a moment. If you've ever stayed in a relationship of any kind and managed to keep your center instead of losing yourself, what helped you do it? Leave it in the comments. Those small examples are like lanterns for anyone else trying to walk the same path. Because in the next part, we're going to explore how this kind of freedom changes not just your relationships, but your entire sense of identity. When you're no longer defined by who stays, who leaves, or how they treat you, you begin to meet a version of yourself you may never have truly seen before. When someone asks, "Who are you?" how do you answer? Most of us start listing roles. I'm a partner, a parent, a friend, a co-worker. We tell the story of the people around us because we've been taught to measure ourselves by the connections we keep. But here's a question that might make the room go quiet. If you took away the titles, the relationships, the memories of who stayed and who left, what's left of you? For many, the answer is unsettling. We've spent so long building our identity out of the things we hold on to, the people we keep close, that when they shift or disappear, we feel like we disappear too. But the Buddha's teaching points to something steady underneath, something that isn't tied to the rise and fall of relationships. Imagine standing in the middle of your life with no script in your hand, no label, no storyline about how it's supposed to go. Just you aware of the breath in your lungs and the ground beneath your feet. That's not emptiness, it's clarity. Because once you see that who you are doesn't depend on who comes or goes, you stop playing defense. You stop bending yourself into shapes just to keep someone from leaving. You stop chasing the feeling of being enough in someone else's eyes. It doesn't mean you stop loving. In fact, your love becomes lighter, warmer, more genuine, because it's not carrying the weight of proving your worth. And here's where I want to hear from you. What's one thing you know about yourself that would still be true, even if every relationship in your life changed tomorrow? Write it in the comments. It might remind someone else that they're more than the roles they play. Next, we're going to take this a step further and look at how choice, not fate, is what writes the next chapter of your life. And once you see that, the idea of destiny will start to feel a lot more like a blank page waiting for your pen. Here's something we rarely admit. Most of what we call destiny is just a decision we've made so many times it started to feel automatic. The person you text when you're lonely, the way you shut down during conflict, the kind of partner you keep falling for even when you know it ends the same way. Choice is where it all begins and repeats. Every thought, every word, every action is like a drop of ink on the page of your life. The lines you've read before are there because you've written them before. But here's the good news. You can write something else. You don't need to fix the whole story at once. You just need to make one choice that isn't the same as the last one. Maybe it's pausing before you react. Maybe it's saying no when you'd normally say yes. Maybe it's walking away when you'd normally grip tighter. Breaking a pattern isn't about sheer willpower, it's about awareness. It's about seeing the moment before the loop closes and realizing I don't have to finish this the way I always do. Think of it like this: every link in a chain is held by the one before it. Remove one link and the chain can't pull you anymore. That's how karma changes. Not with grand gestures, but with one quiet conscious choice at a time. If you've ever made a small choice that ended up changing a lot more than you expected, I'd love to hear that story. Drop it in the comments. You never know whose chain might loosen because of your example. Next, we'll talk about what happens when you start making these new choices regularly. Because that's when life stops feeling like something happening to you and starts feeling like something you're actively creating moment by moment, choice by choice. There's a moment that sneaks up on you when you've been making new choices for a while. You wake up one morning, look around and realize the air feels lighter. The conversations you're having are different. The people around you either feel warmer or they've quietly drifted away, and you didn't force any of it. You simply stopped feeding the same old loops and life responded by reshaping itself around your new rhythm. This is what it's like to live in the flow you've created, not the one you inherited from habit or pain. When you act from clarity instead of fear, the entire current of your relationships changes. It's not that challenges vanish, but you meet them without the old panic. You listen without defending. You speak without manipulating. You stay or you leave without the ache of proving yourself right. It's not control, it's participation. You're no longer a passenger on a boat you didn't choose. You're steering even if the water gets rough. And here's the thing people will notice. Some will be drawn closer because they feel safe in your calm. Others will step back because they can no longer hook you with the same drama. Both are okay. If you've ever made changes in yourself and watched your relationships shift because of it, tell me in the comments what surprised you the most. Your answer might help someone else realize they're allowed to let the river change course. Next, we're going to explore something even deeper. How staying in this self-created flow doesn't just change how you love or connect. It changes how you experience freedom itself. And that kind of freedom, it's not about getting away. It's about finally feeling at home wherever you are. Most people think of freedom as something you earn after the work is done, after the problems are solved, after you've finally figured it all out. But the kind of freedom we're talking about here isn't a prize at the end of the race. It's a way of moving through life while the race is still happening. Freedom isn't the absence of problems, it's the absence of being ruled by them. It's being in a heated conversation and still feeling grounded. It's loving someone deeply without trying to script how they love you back. It's waking up to uncertainty and still feeling steady inside your own skin. This isn't detachment in the cold arms crossed way. It's an open-handed kind of living where you can hold what matters without crushing it. You can let the river of life flow through your hands without needing to dam it up or redirect it. When you live like this, fate stops being something you wait for or fear. You're not waiting for the perfect moment, the right person, or the next big sign from the universe. You are simply here choosing, responding, creating in real time. And the best part, the more you live from this place, the less anyone else's actions can dictate your peace. Not because you've built walls, but because you've built roots. If you've ever felt a moment of that kind of freedom, even if it only lasted a heartbeat, I'd love to hear about it. Share it in the comments. Your story might remind someone else that freedom isn't far away. It's already in the way they take the next step. In the next part, we're going to bring everything we've talked about into one clear point. How the stories we tell ourselves about love loss and destiny can either trap us or set us free. And once you see that you'll never look at the word fate the same way again. Every day, you're telling yourself a story. Sometimes it's a quiet background hum. Sometimes it's a loud narrator in your head. But it's always there shaping the way you see yourself, your relationships, and your future. Maybe your story sounds like this. I always fall for the wrong people. Good things never last for me. I'm just not the kind of person who gets happy endings. Here's the problem. When you repeat a story often enough, your mind stops treating it as a thought and starts treating it as a fact. And once it feels like a fact, you'll start making choices that keep the story alive. That's how destiny gets written, not by the stars, but by your own narration. But here's the liberating flip side. If a story can be told, it can be rewritten. You can choose a different ending, not by forcing the world to behave differently, but by telling yourself a different truth about who you are and what's possible for you. It's not about lying to yourself, it's about choosing a story that makes space for growth instead of locking you in the same loop. Instead of, I always get left, maybe it becomes, I'm learning to choose people who stay. Instead of, I can't trust anyone, maybe it becomes, I'm practicing trusting myself first. The shift isn't instant, but every time you repeat the new story, it plants a seed. And with each choice you make from that new perspective, the seed grows roots. So here's a question for you, and I'd love for you to answer in the comments. If you could rewrite just one sentence in the story you tell yourself, what would it be? Write it down. Make it the line you come back to every time the old narrator tries to take over. Because in the next part, we're going to look at what happens when you start living that new story, not just saying it. And that's when you stop chasing freedom and start being it. There's a moment when the story you've been telling yourself stops being just words and starts becoming the way you move through the world. You don't have to force it. You don't have to wake up every morning chanting affirmations until you're exhausted. It happens quietly in the way you respond differently, the way you notice patterns sooner, the way you let go without turning it into a battle. When you start living your chosen story, your choices align with it naturally. If your new story is, I'm learning to choose people who stay, you'll feel it in the way you set boundaries early instead of waiting for them to be crossed. If it's, I trust myself first, you'll feel it when you walk away from something that doesn't sit right without needing anyone else to validate that choice. And here's the beautiful part. The world starts reflecting your new story back to you. It's not magic. It's momentum. Each decision plants another marker on the path you're building. People respond to the way you carry yourself. Opportunities start showing up that match the energy you've been living. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes perfect. You'll still have hard days. You'll still face loss and uncertainty. But you'll meet those moments from a different place, one where you're steady enough not to fall back into the old plot. I'd love to hear from you if you are already living your new story right now. What's one small thing you would do differently today? Share it in the comments, because sometimes writing it down is the first step to making it real. Next, we're going to close the loop by looking at how this shift from believing in fate to living by choice transforms not only your relationships, but your sense of peace. And once you've seen that change in yourself, you'll realize you were never waiting for destiny. Destiny was waiting for you. When you've spent years believing in fate, it's hard to imagine life without that safety net. Fate tells you things happen to you. Choice tells you things happen through you. And when you make that shift, peace stops being something you have to hunt for. It's not in the next relationship. It's not hiding at the end of some perfect career path. It's in the quiet confidence that you can meet whatever comes without losing yourself in the process. You start to notice that peace isn't a win you get for making all the right moves. It's what happens when you stop fighting with reality. When you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what's my next right step? This is where choice becomes a kind of freedom that fate could never give you. Because if fate is fixed, it can trap you just as easily as it can bless you. But choice is flexible. It's the door that's always open even when the hallway looks the same as it did yesterday. And here's the best part. You don't have to make every choice perfectly. You just have to keep making them consciously. One clear decision today can undo years of unconscious ones. So tell me in the comments, what's one area of your life where you're ready to replace fate with choice? Your answer might be the nudge someone else needs to stop waiting for the stars to align. Next, we'll look at how to carry this peace forward. How to keep your choices clear and your heart steady, even when old patterns try to pull you back in. Because real transformation isn't just about breaking the loop once. It's about learning how to never get tangled in it again. Here's the thing no one tells you about change. The old patterns don't just vanish because you've decided to live differently. They wait. They linger in the background like a familiar song you used to love, ready to pull you back into dancing the same tired steps. Sometimes it's a message from someone you swore you were done with. Sometimes it's a situation so similar to an old hurt that your body reacts before your mind catches up. This is where clarity matters most. Clarity doesn't mean you'll never feel the pull. It means you'll notice it, name it, and choose anyway. Instead of, I can't believe this is happening again, it becomes, here's that old loop trying to start again. and just naming it takes away half its power. It's like standing at a fork in the road and realizing, I've been down that path before. You know where it ends. You can take a different turn, not because you're stronger than the pull, but because you're wiser about where it leads. Here's where community matters too. The more you surround yourself with people and reminders that support your new story, the easier it is to choose it, especially when your old self comes knocking. So here's a thought. What's one trigger, one familiar pull that you're committed to recognizing the moment it shows up? Write it in the comments, saying it out loud. Yes, even in a YouTube comment can make it that much easier to see next time. Up next, we're going to explore what happens when you make enough of these clear choices that they stop feeling like effort. That's when your new way of living doesn't just feel possible, it starts to feel natural. And that's when freedom stops being something you practice and starts being who you are. At first, living differently feels like work. You're constantly catching yourself mid-reaction, pausing to remember your new story, choosing the other path. It's exhausting sometimes, like learning a new language and having to translate every thought before you speak. But then, without fanfare, something shifts. You don't have to pause as often because your reflexes have changed. The things that used to hook you barely get a reaction. You walk into situations that once triggered every defense you had and find yourself steady, almost surprised by your own calm. This is when freedom stops being a skill you practice and starts being the way you move through the world. It's not that challenges disappear, it's that your relationship to them changes. You see them coming without bracing for impact. You engage without losing your center. You choose without the old fear of choosing wrong. And this is where you realize the version of you that lived on autopilot feels like a distant relative. You remember them, you understand them, but you're not them anymore. So let me ask you, if living in freedom was just how you operated, what's one thing in your life that would feel completely different? Put it in the comments. Someone else might read it and think, that's exactly the shift I want to. In the next section, we'll talk about sustaining this kind of freedom for the long haul. How to keep your clarity clear and your choices intentional, even as life changes around you. Because staying free isn't about holding on tight. It's about learning to move with the current without letting it carry you away. The thing about freedom is it's not something you win once and then keep forever without effort. Life keeps moving. Circumstances shift. People come and go. And with every new season, the temptation to fall back into old loops will find its way to your door. Sustaining your freedom isn't about gripping it tightly. It's about tending to it like a garden. You check the soil. You pull the weeds before they take root. You give it what it needs to thrive, and you stay patient with the seasons when growth feels slow. That means keeping your awareness alive even when things are going well. Especially when things are going well. Because comfort can make us forget the practices that got us here in the first place. For some, that might look like a daily moment of stillness. Just breathing, just checking in. For others, it might be journaling or having honest conversations with friends who will call you out when you're slipping into old patterns. Whatever your version looks like, the key is consistency, not perfection. Freedom lasts when you keep choosing it over and over in small ways. Not because you're afraid to lose it, but because you've fallen in love with the way it feels to live this way. So here's your reflection for today. What's one practice, no matter how small, that helps you return to your center? Share it in the comments. You might give someone else exactly the tool they need to stay steady. Next, we're going to talk about how this steady kind of freedom transforms the way you relate to others, how you can be deeply connected without ever giving away the steering wheel of your own life. Because that balance is where both love and freedom can finally live side by side. For most of us, love has been taught as an exchange. You give a piece of yourself, they give a piece of themselves, and somewhere in the middle, you both hope you've made a fair trade. But too often, that trade turns into a slow erosion until one day, you look in the mirror and can't quite remember where you end and the other person begins. Loving without losing yourself is a different way of being. It means you can let someone all the way in without handing them the keys to your peace. You can be open without being hollowed out. You can care deeply without becoming a reflection of someone else's moods, choices, or wounds. In Buddhist thought, this is love without attachment, not love without feeling. It's not about holding people at arm's length. It's about holding them with open hands, knowing that love is healthiest when it can breathe. When you practice this, your relationships start to feel lighter. You're no longer loving from fear. Fear, they'll leave fear. They'll change fear. They won't love you back the same way. Instead, you're loving from choice, and that choice renews itself every day. And here's the paradox: when you stop trying to control love, you often get to experience it more fully. Because now, you're not bracing for loss, you're savoring what's here. So let me ask you, what's one boundary you've set or want to set that allows you to love someone and stay true to yourself? Write it in the comments. It might be the example someone else needs to believe they can do it too. Next, we're going to explore what happens when this kind of love meets loss, because even the most mindful relationships can end. And learning to let go without collapsing is one of the deepest freedoms you'll ever know. Loss is one of the hardest tests of everything we've talked about so far. It's easy to feel steady when life is calm, when love is flowing, when nothing is being taken away. But when a relationship ends, whether through distance, conflict, or life's unpredictable turns, it can feel like the ground has been pulled out from under you. Most of us are taught to handle loss in one of two ways: cling harder, trying to hold on to what's already slipping away, or shut down completely, sealing off our hearts so we can't be hurt again. Letting go without falling apart is the middle path. It's allowing yourself to grieve without drowning. It's feeling the ache without turning it into a permanent scar. It's recognizing that just because someone's role in your life has changed or ended, the meaning of that connection doesn't disappear. In Buddhist teaching, this is impermanence in action. Everything changes. Everyone changes. When you accept this not as a punishment, but as a truth of life loss becomes something you can meet with open eyes instead of a clenched fist. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending you're fine when you're not. It means trusting that you can carry what you've learned forward, even if you're not carrying the person with you. So here's your moment of reflection. What's one thing you've gained from a relationship that ended a lesson, a strength, a clearer understanding of yourself? Share it in the comments. Your insight might help someone else see that letting go can still leave you with something valuable. Next, we'll bring everything together by looking at what it really means to live with open hands, ready to welcome what comes and release what goes without losing your balance. Because in that space, love and freedom aren't opposites anymore. They're the same thing. There's a quiet strength in living with open hands. It's not about indifference. It's not about caring less. It's about trusting yourself enough to welcome what comes and to release what goes without losing your center in either moment. When your hands are open, love can flow in freely and it can leave without tearing you apart. Opportunities can arrive without you gripping them so tightly that you crush them. And life can change as it always will without pulling you into the panic of trying to make it stay the same. This way of living doesn't make you detached, it makes you available. You're able to meet people, experiences, and moments exactly as they are without the weight of expectation distorting them. It's a lighter way to move through the world, but it's also deeply rooted because your steadiness no longer depends on anything outside of you. And here's the beauty when people feel your open hands and steady heart. They often feel safer to be their true selves with you. Your freedom gives them permission to drop their masks. Your balance invites them into their own. So, here's my question for you. If you lived with truly open hands, what's one thing you would stop gripping so tightly today? Put it in the comments. You never know how your answer might unlock something for someone else. In the next section, we'll move into the second half of our journey, where we'll explore how to keep this openness alive, not just in moments of love or loss, but in the everyday flow of life. Because true freedom isn't just for the big moments, it's for the small, ordinary days where your choices quietly shape who you're becoming. So here we are, full circle. We began with the idea that what we call fate might not be a cosmic script at all, but a chain of choices, threads we've been weaving knot by knot, often without realizing it. And somewhere along the way, you might have felt it, that shift in perspective. The kind where you start to see your relationships, your patterns, even your own story through a clearer lens. Maybe tonight, you've noticed a link in the chain you're ready to break. Or maybe you've simply felt the weight lift a little, knowing that destiny isn't something you wait for. It's something you participate in moment by moment. Here's what I hope you carry with you. You are not bound by who you were yesterday. You are not defined by who stayed or who left. You are and always have been the one making the next choice. So as you drift towards sleep, let your hands unclench. Let the river of your life move as it will. Welcome what comes, release what goes, and trust yourself to stay steady in the middle of it all. Before we close, I'd love to know what's one insight from tonight's journey that you want to remember in the morning. Leave it in the comments and maybe even come back to read what others have shared. And if this space has been a quiet place for you tonight, go ahead and subscribe, tap the notification bell, and we'll keep meeting here for more of these slow, thoughtful walks together. For now, let the day dissolve behind you. Breathe in the calm you've been shaping, and know that in this moment, exactly as you are free. If tonight's story gave you even a small moment of peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know by liking this video. It helps these quiet corners reach others who might need them. And if you'd like to keep walking this path together, subscribe to Stories for Sleep and tap the notification bell so you'll know when the next journey is ready for you. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Where in the world are you listening from tonight, and what time is it there? It's always beautiful to see how far these words travel and to know we're connected across so many different nights. Until next time, may your heart rest easy, your breath be slow, and your dreams be kind.